for the record. That marker came with a calendar that you're supposed to write on it and then be able to erase it so that, you can change the month on it. I will not be using that marker. God, thank you for your forgiveness. How are you? Thank you for coming to worship and celebrate the 500th anniversary of the beginning of the Reformation. 500 years. I have to admit that I've been more than a little bit nervous in thinking about what to talk with you all this morning. I mean, I don't think any of us are going to be around for the next one. Like a lot of times you can be like, oh, I'll get it next year. I don't think I'm going to be around in 500 years. So we better do it up right. And we have so far. We got Ms. Joy Lynn and our fabulous brass musicians leading Martin Luther's hymn, "A Mighty Fortress is Our God." The choir singing an anthem based on Psalm 46, Luther's favorite psalm. And we have a special luncheon following the service with some of Martin's favorite foods, excluding beer. No beer. But we also have an amazing cake out there. If you have not seen it, you should stay for the cake alone. We even have a photo op chance with the famous couple out there in the hallway as you saw them come in. And yet, what is the point of today's celebration? Why was the Reformation so necessary? But perhaps maybe even a more important question is, why is the Reformation still significant today? I mean, if you think about it, no one has ever been saved by interesting historical facts. No one has ever been converted by a celebration. No one was ever transformed by an anniversary. So what do we need to hear this morning? Throughout the centuries, Lutherans have led the way in developing important theological insights. All right, one of the biggest ones, Julia helped us in this. She brought up a Bible, right? And we Lutherans are big fans of translating the Bible into people's native first tongue, so that they can read it for themselves, so that they can think and interpret it for themselves. Lutherans have also developed the idea of vocation, where all of us are called to live a life of service to our neighbors. It's not just for the professional religious elite, it's for everyone to live out their calling in baptism. Or maybe I could preach on the granddaddy of them all, the fact that we understand that we are saved by grace through faith. We are forgiven by grace through our relationship with Jesus Christ, and not by our good deeds or by our correct beliefs. All of these are important, and I could keep going. But I wonder if we need to go back even further and simpler. I want to look at what changed Martin Luther's life and see if we need it to change our lives too. Anyone know the story about how Martin Luther supposedly made the decision to become a priest? Anybody out there? All right, what do we got?
He was in the middle of the field and a thunderstorm came and he was afraid. So he asked God to get him through the storm and not perish, and he would commit his life to Christ.
Yep. All right. So basically, he was scared. All right. Martin Luther was laying out in the middle of a farm field, lightning hitting all around him. Dear God, save me, and I will become a priest. Martin's career began because he was afraid. And storms weren't the primary thing that Luther feared or drove his thoughts and actions. Martin Luther was afraid of God. Early on, Luther imagined God as an angry, wrathful, and judgmental God, just waiting for us to mess up, believe incorrectly, so that God could punish us, smash us, and cast us into hellfire for eternity. How many of us have ever felt this way about God? How many of us have only sensed that our Creator is disappointed or angry with us? How many of us have ever felt like we were never good enough for our God or for our church? There are still people and churches pushing this image of God as a perpetually angry and vengeful and wrathful God. There are still too many Christians who feel fear and use fear as their primary motivator in order to try to share their faith with other people. Perhaps this is where the Christian church still desperately needs a reformation. A reformation in how we imagine God. And this is what happened to Luther. As he got older, as he studied the Bible, Luther began to see God in a new way. God's primary action towards humanity wasn't anger. It wasn't judgment, but rather persistent love and never-ending forgiveness. God is love. This is the truth that Luther discovered in our Holy Scriptures. This is the truth that Jesus speaks of in our gospel lesson today from John. Jesus says, "If you continue in my word, you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free." That sounds good, God. What is that truth that I'm supposed to hold on to? Later, Jesus reveals what that truth is that he's speaking of. Rather, he reveals who that truth is. Jesus says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." And what does that truth look like? God's truth looks like an empty tomb. God simply loves us too much to lose us to sin and death. All the disciples, all right? All the disciples fall short, right? In following Jesus. And how many of you have ever tried to make a jump past something? Does it matter if you're a little short or a lot short? You're still short. The disciples all fell short in following Jesus. They betrayed him, they denied him, they abandoned their best friend and teacher. And yet, God's love for them is so strong that Jesus can't stay dead, won't stay dead, and leaves the tomb. And who's the first person that Jesus wants to see when he gets up? Those disciples that fell short. The very same ones who failed him. This is because our God is primarily a God of love and not anger and revenge. This is good news. But there's better news. There's gospel. We too, me, you, we have fallen short in our lives. We've made mistakes. We've hurt those that we've loved. We've ignored people around us that are suffering. And yet, despite our sin, the tomb is empty. Jesus has come back for you, me, and the entire world. Why? Because God is crazily in love with you. Not someday, not once you get everything worked out and get your life together and right. Now, today, here, through the crucifixion and resurrection, God chooses to change the world through love. This message of grace, love, and forgiveness is at the center of the Reformation, 500 years ago, and continues to guide our church today. This love, first given to us, flows out of St. Peter's Lutheran, the ELCA, our national church, and 75 million Lutherans around the globe. We seek to bring about God's kingdom, not through threats, but through grace and love. This is why we give. This is why we serve. This is why you give generously to agencies such as Lutheran Disaster Response. There's a drought affecting Western Africa right now. I don't know how many of you know the role that we are playing there. We are helping over 60,000 people avoid starvation. Locally, your love drives you to ring bells and support the Salvation Army. Salvation Army has the only soup kitchen here in Uniontown, and you support that. Your love provides an open and welcoming church, a baptismal font, and a communion table where all can receive the grace of God that they are desperately seeking. If Reformation Sunday is only about celebrating our past acts of love, then we're missing out on Martin's understanding of God's primary identity. So I ask us, how will each of us live out God's reformation of love in our schools this week, at our jobs, in our homes, and around our communities? Because we remember that we seek not just to celebrate the Reformation, but to live the Reformation in our love for God, in our love for our neighbor. Thanks be to God and amen.